Good afternoon. This is the 30th of 53 consecutive 5-mile walks from the Gresford Disaster Memorial to the Miners' Rescue and back again.
Public inquiries, such as the one for the Gresford disaster, are set up to scrutinise events that have caused public concern. Recent inquiries in the UK include the Leveson inquiry into press ethics, the Horizon Post Office inquiry and the Grenfell Tower inquiry.
Their purpose is to discover what happened and why it happened, and we've been there and done that, but they also serve the purpose of finding out who is accountable. Sir Henry Walker, Commissioner of the Inquiry, did consider the culpability of the Gresford miners. For example, when condemning the haphazard use of shot firing, he declared that the workmen were just as keen to get shots fired speedily as those who were firing the shots, if they were to get through their shift's work. He was also of the view that many of the miners who witnessed unsafe working practices of superiors not only turned a blind eye, but were party to the offences and actively assisted them. Given some of the miners' direct involvement, he expressed little surprise that the miners had not drawn attention to the dangerous practices involving shot firing below ground during the inquiry. He also drew attention to a tacit arrangement between management and miners, which led to the disregard of the law prohibiting miners from working shifts over 8 hours. Walker alluded to the considerable amount of evidence that suggested the miners were allowed to work and did work longer than the prescribed 8 hours. Bonsall, in his evidence, admitted he knew this was a breach of the Act, but many of the men liked it and they asked for it. Walker went as far as to say it was a distressing feature of the inquiry that there were so many workmen who, according to their evidence, knew of and were alarmed at conditions which they considered dangerous, and yet took no steps to secure from themselves or their fellow workers the protection to which they thought they were entitled. All perhaps fair comments in some faraway utopia, a utopia where miners would have worked in safe conditions, where they'd have been paid fairly and proportionally to the back-breaking work they performed, and where high employment didn't provide a constant threat to their livelihoods and survival. Remember, there was always someone out there to replace them. No, theirs was a dystopia. Watch Fritz Lang's classic of the genre, Metropolis from 1927, and tell me you don't see the Gresford miners in it, slaving at the coals, driving themselves into early graves while lining the pockets of the fortunate few as the miners drove the empire. Cripps's council saw this and reacted aggressively to suggestions from Shawcross that the miners had shown less interest than they may have in safety. In fairness to Walker, he represented Cripps's view in the inquiry report, writing, "Practically speaking, the individual miner was impotent because of the fear of victimisation in a set of economic and other circumstances which would completely ruin him." We end with some excerpts of the questions asked of the miners and the answers they gave. When you complained about the gas, did you ask to see the subsequent report? When you've had a shift, you come out. You don't stop to bother looking at anything. Did it ever occur to you to stop at the pit top rather than go down if the conditions were so dangerous? No, we had to go down. Why did you have to go down? That's our living. Even at the expense of what might occur, we had to risk it, didn't we? You prepared to risk not only your own safety, but that of others? I had to. When you knew of the conditions that Friday night were becoming so serious that you were glad to get out of it, You took no steps to prevent the men going in. The management knew about it. The management knew about it. Didn't you think it was important that managers should know there was gas down there? When I complained to the fireman, he told me to shut my mouth. I've opened my mouth a lot, but it's no use. Would you expect the management to take action if it was reported? They'd have laughed at you. This walk was dedicated to William Jones of Rose, William Jones of Roasty, James Kelsall, John Kelsall, and William Lawrence. And today's song is Workers of the Underworld from the Metropolis soundtrack.